Welcome to the April 20th meeting of the Santa Barbara City Council Ordinance Committee. Ms. Peterson, would you please call a roll?
Chair Bendy White.
Here.
Member Frank Hotchkiss.
Here.
Member Grant House.
Here. Thank you. So, Ms. Peterson, would you please read the item that's to be before us today?
The item today before you is the Architectural Board of Review 2010 membership provisions.
Thank you. And Mr. Limon, you have a presentation for us?
Yes, I do. Good afternoon, Ordinance Committee members. Today we're trying to address a update that's required in our ordinance to update the municipal code as a result of the adoption of Measure E. As you recall, last November, the city voters voted to amend Section 814 of the city charter to reduce the membership of the ABR from 9 members to 7 members. Measure E also authorized the City Council to adopt an ordinance to properly transition the ABR from 9 members to 7 members. What we have today is a straightforward request to implement the Measure E provisions and also requesting a slight amendment to resolve a minor problem has developed with regarding membership. The first ordinance change that we're proposing is strictly just a change to Title 22 to make the ordinance consistent with the city charter. It's a straightforward change. Right now it says 9. We'd like to change it back to 7 as the city charter. The section, also the transition period provision is also being proposed, and I'll explain to that the provisions of that shortly. But first of all, this is the Section 2268 as proposed to read. So it's pretty straightforward. It's just a cleanup. The section regarding the transition period involves allowing a temporary transition period to allow 8 members. And the purpose of this change is because we actually had a problem developed as a result of the charter amendment. The city clerk ruled that in order to reduce it down to 7, that the last appointed member would need to be the one that vacated the position, and that happened to be a landscape architect, the second landscape architect on the board. And we have since developed a problem with that lack of second landscape architect. We would have liked to have come earlier in the year to address this problem, but unfortunately it did get delayed until April. We feel that we can address this a vacancy through a recruitment through mid-year. So we have posted that recruitment contingent on this ordinance passing and go forward. I just wanted to explain to you that there are specific membership qualifications of the board, and what we're speaking about is not altering those membership qualifications, but just recruiting for a professional qualification provision that allows a second landscape architect in mid-year. And the reason we need those landscape architects is obviously we like a balance of opinions when you have 2 architects there deciding on the landscape plan. It also allows for a backup role when one of the landscape architects has to abstain or step down from an item. And obviously there's a commitment to do landscape plan reviews at the consent calendar. Right now, our current landscape architect feels a little bit overworked and would like to have some assistance in that endeavor to fill in on the consent calendar. And I think she's actually forwarded some emails to the board, the council members, indicating she supports the recruitment of the second landscape architect, as well as the entire ABR who supports the proposal. And that concludes my staff report, and our recommendation is you forward these changes to council for adoption.
Thank you, Mr. Limon. Mr. Hotchkiss?
Thank you, Mr. Limon. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the makeup on the 7 will be 2 landscape architects, 2 regular architects. What else we got here? 3 other members with professional qualifications in related fields, correct?
That includes the architects, I believe.
That's correct. The idea is that the professional qualifications provisions would include the landscape architects. Okay. So those positions would be filled using that requirement. Because right now you have 2 that are required to be licensed architects, 3 that are required to be professional experience, and 2 that are public at large.
Okay. So forgive me, but what's the makeup going to be when we reduce to 7, as you described?
That's correct. It is actually currently 7.
Okay.
What we would like to do is, at mid-year cycle recruitment, expand it temporarily to 8, and then transition back to 7 at the end of the year when we have a normal recruitment appointment process.
Right. Thank you. Any questions, Mr. House? All right. Then I don't have any. I'm supportive myself of the changes and makes reasonable sense. I'm looking for a motion to approve this.
Oh, okay. Mr. Chair, I'll be glad to move the approval of the staff recommendation with the just exactly the way it was presented to us today by Mr. Limon.
Thank you. Mr. Hodge.
Second.
We have a motion and second for recommendation that council approve this.
And I do want to say I appreciate that you took the time to explain that, because that issue is really important that there be the 2. And I think that everybody in ABR recognizes that, and it will make a difference. We need that diversity of opinion.
Absolutely. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So the motion passes. And when would this go to council, Mr. Limon? Do we have?
We would like to try to implement this in early May to have the recruitment go forward as expected in June, July.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And is there any other business?